Hey guys, Roger here, pastor of Preaching and Vision at Matthew's Table. We're glad that you decided to join us and tune in to see our service. I would say that this isn't something that we hope you replace your local church with, but this is something to just build on that and encourage you and help you see Jesus in a bigger, better way.
I'm Pastor Nick Martin, pastor of Discipleship and Outreach, and we pray this just blesses you and grows you in your relationship with Christ. Good morning. Yeah, like what Roger said, oh, what a Savior. Isn't he wonderful? And as I was driving to church this morning, on my way here, about 7, I always have to pass the softball fields. And one thing that I thought about as I passed it, it's 7 a.m. and games are in full swing. And when I first seen that, I was like, wow, that's commitment. And then I kept thinking about it, and it's really not commitment, it's normal. And as I kept thinking, I was just like, how is it normal for 7 a.m. softball tournaments to be in full swing, but we struggle to come to church for 1 hour a week? And it just kind of convicted me on what normal is in the world and what normal is for Christians. Because if, we think about like where we're having a revival next month, and we think about like having a 3-day revival, and like, why is that abnormal? Just to get together and hear the word and to listen to the word. And why is it abnormal for us to just come together and pray and to fellowship and to partake in communion? And it fits perfectly into the sermon that God's given me this morning. In what we feast on and what the world feasts on should be two different things. A Christian's appetite and the world's appetite should be two different things. And John Piper has a quote that I love, and it reads, "If you don't feel strong desires for the manifestation of the glory of God, it is not because you have drunk deeply and are satisfied. It's because you have nibbled so long at the table of the world." You have nibbled so long at the table of this world. For all my fishing people in here that post pictures so the fish look bigger, who won't tell anyone about their fishing spots, who had a few extra pounds on each fish so it sounds better, this morning I'm going to start off talking about bait. See, yesterday was the rod-ripping catfish trail. It was a fundraiser for Friends of Sinners, and they had a competition between Kentucky versus Indiana. And somehow my good friend Donald got stuck parking cars. I pulled up, he was like, yeah, park over there. But they had this fishing tournament. And at this tournament, like I was getting to see the fish weighed in and to see who won and to see who caught the biggest fish and the most fish. And they set out for bragging rights on who was the better fisherman versus Kentucky and Indiana. Indiana won, by the way. But here's what I guarantee no one said. No one said, hey, let's just take the boats and not worry about the bait. Not one person said, hey, I don't need any bait. I'll just put the hook in. That would be crazy, right? Because bait is designed to attract and catch fish. What the bait does, it hides what's behind it, and before the fish even knows it, it has a hook deep within its mouth. And you may be sitting here this morning thinking, how does this relate to me? I don't even like fishing. But here's what I want to tell each one of us. The bait trying to get you is always closer than you think. The bait trying to get us is always closer than you think. it's shiny, and it's pretty, and it will do anything it can to steal your attention away from Jesus. As some of us can relate, we've taken nibbles at the table of this world, and we end up with a hook deep within our mouths. For some of us sitting in here this morning, that bait may be the man or woman in your life that you're chasing after. For some of us, the bait may be your favorite TV show. For others, the bait may be social media, food, offenses, sports, and honestly, the list goes on and on and on. Think about this for a second and ask yourself, how do I identify the bait that tries to lure me in? How do I know what I'm nibbling at? How do I know if it has a hook behind it? And how do I know if my satisfaction is in Christ and Christ alone? Here's a question that I think we can always ask to see the bait in our lives. Is that thing pointing me to or away from Christ? Is that thing pointing me to or away from Christ? Is that show now taking away my time with God? Is my phone stealing my Bible reading time? There are three things in the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus assumes that his disciples would do. And he is teaching them to pray and to give and now fast with the right motivations. This morning it will be in Matthew chapter 6, verses 16 through 18, where Jesus tells his disciples it's not if you fast, but when you fast. And as I was preparing this, I met with a friend, and he honestly was like, Nick, I can't tell you the last time I fasted. And in the chapter of the book we're reading, it said, you know, fasting is almost a forgotten practice amongst Christians. Let's read verse 16. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces so that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who is in secret will reward you. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is when you fast, it's not so others will see you. We give, we pray, we fast for an audience of one. And Jesus is always asking in the Sermon on the Mount, what's the motivation behind what you do? Why do you serve? Why do you give? Why do you pray? Why do you fast? Is it to be seen by me or is it to be seen by everyone else? And as I was thinking about this and preparing for this, I was reminded about something that happened in May 2020. In May 2020, God did something so big, so crazy, so radical that literally blew my mind and changed the course of Matthew's table. If you have been to Matthew's table from the beginning, you watched us go from 30 people to 300 people. You watched us go from no worship team to a full worship team. You watched us go from having kids' classes in hallways to having more than enough rooms for the kids' classes. If you are new here and you don't know the history of Matthew's table, we used to meet at the Elizabeth Monday Center. Each week we would have to set up, tear down, put all the chairs up, bring everything out, and you would have a bunch of guys packing chairs like this picture, trying to impress the ladies at church like, I'm swole and you better know it. I remember guys looking like that. I remember doing our very first missional event. I think that's how Brad got Ashley. He was packing a lot of chairs. I remember doing our very first church jail service. I remember anytime I couldn't help on Saturday night, I would get a text from my good friend Robert Godsey that just read, slacker. Starting Matthew's table, we had no money at all, like literally no money, no smart plan. And looking back, starting Matthew's table was kind of crazy. So a year or two went by, and what happened is more people kept coming, and it got to a point of we didn't know what we was going to do. So we started like, hey, what are we going to do? Are we going to go to 2 services? Let's start looking at buildings. And we got to this place of really not knowing what direction to go. So we started looking at buildings in what we felt like was our price range. And buildings in our price range meant the roof was caving in, or it was a completely just abandoned building that we was going to have to go in and gut and put walls up and do everything to. So we looked at like multiple buildings that wouldn't work, but we're thinking could work. And in this process, we're like, do we go to 2 services? But that's a lot of setting up and tearing down and getting ready. So we was just like stuck. What do we do? So in that process of not knowing what to do, we do what Christians usually do when they don't know what to do, and we started praying. We started meeting together and just said, hey, let's just start praying every Saturday night and asking God for direction. And here's what God did and what should blow your mind. Since May 2020, we've been sitting in what I would call an answered prayer. We started praying, and now we're sitting on the corner of 23rd and Allen Street because of an answered prayer. We're sitting in a building that was a $3 million building that we couldn't afford because of an answered prayer. Yeah, so one of the sweetest things that we should all never forget is we are sitting in a building that has been used for 100 years. And as we were praying for God to give us a place to call home, Buena Vista was praying that they could find someone to give this building to. So at the same time, 2 churches were praying that this building would be used for the glory of God and for the direction of this church. So one thing I'm reminded of is every time I walk in these doors is we are in a building that we couldn't afford, that our greatest plans couldn't imagine, and that should always point us to a God that provides, a God that hears prayers, and a God that goes before us. It should always point us to that. But if I was to be real, although God has provided, my mind always drifts into self-reliance and self-motivation. And now I have to do it myself. Now it's, God, I know you gave us this building that we couldn't afford, but can we really afford the payments? Can we really afford to fix it? What if the air goes out? What if this needs work? God, can we really do it? So my mind still always drifts into relying upon myself. Here's the danger zone that we're facing today. Sometimes good things pull us away from God things. And we can start thinking we did it instead of He did it. Sometimes good things pull us away from God things, and we can start thinking we did it instead of He did it. We can start thinking, look at me. I'm the man. Instead of look at God, He's the man. And all of us have done it in one way or the other. All of us drift towards self-reliance and self-motivation and depending upon self. All of us have had prayed prayers like, God, I promise if you get me out of this situation, I'll never turn my back on you. God, I promise if you get me out of jail. God, I promise if you answer my prayer, all I need is you and all I'll ever need is you. I've done that. And God answered my prayers. And then life happens. And then I get busy. And then slowly but surely the drift happens where I'm trusting in Nick, whether trusting in God. It always happens, and I always have to say, Nick, where's your attention at? And that's why we fast. We fast to remind ourselves that God's ways are better than our own. We fast to remind ourselves that His plans should trump ours, and that we are dependent upon Him to live for Him and to have eyes focused on Him. We fast to set aside normal distractions of our busy go schedules and our busy lives in order to place our attention back on Christ. Here's what the enemy does, though, while we're trying to do that. He makes the bait look so good. He makes that thing look so good. He makes the thing that we like to nibble at look so sweet, because that's what bait is supposed to do. You're not supposed to see the hook behind it. You're not supposed to see the hook coming. You're supposed to think it's just good. You're supposed to think that you need more of it. That's why Jesus tells His disciples that it's not if you fast, but when you fast. Jesus assumes they will fast because of the danger of having a greater love for the things of this world rather than the things of God. We can quickly, as Christians, even the most spiritual people, we can quickly place creation over the Creator. We can quickly place gifts over the gift giver, and good things quickly take us away from God things. But here's what Matthew 4:4 tells us, that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Here's what I know. You should be able to tell the difference from a person that's feasting of the world and a person that is feasting on the word. There should be a clear difference between a believer and an unbeliever. A Christian's appetite in the things we consume should not be the same things that the world consumes. When Christ changes our lives, our desires change. And that music that used to feed me and I used to find oh so good and oh so attractive, it becomes different. In the shows that I used to freely watch, it becomes less and less attractive the more I place my eyes upon Him. The problem again is that bait looks so good because it's usually the bait that you love. It's your flavor. It tastes so good. It looks so good, and it's hard to stay away from. If you was to be honest, we all have that bait that we're attracted to. We all have that bait that's shiny, and we live in a culture that completely hates self-denial. We live in a culture that tells you, hey, don't push it back. Take it. Get all you want. Get all that you need. You only live once. And Jesus, and why He says when you fast, is He says, live for what truly matters, and that's me. He says, hey, you can push back on things of this world to have more of me. In our book we're reading, it says, and this is a thought I've had all week. It says the greatest enemy of hunger for God is not poison, but apple pie. So the greatest enemy of our hunger for God is not poison, but apple pie. It's when you think that you got all that you need. It's the apple pie that pulls our eyes off of Christ. It's not the poison. And you know what that is? It's because you know to stay away from the poison. You know to stay away from the hook with no bait. You know to stay away from the things that you perceive as the worst of the worst. Like, I'll never go back to that. I'll never do that again. But then we create these gray areas and we think like, just give me one slice of that sweet old apple pie, right? We think, just give me one bite, one nibble. Just give me one piece. Here's how that looks in my life and people I know's life. I'll just miss this one Sunday. I'll just skip my Bible reading this week. I'll just, I'm busy this morning, so I'll just do this instead of spending my alone time with God. I'll just get plugged in later on. I'll do this later on because I got so much going on today. And here's what the culture screams, and here's the bait. We think it's not just that bad. It's not that bad. I'm not as worse as I used to be. I'm not as bad as those people way over there, so we keep nibbling at the things that I've loved. And here's what I've learned the few times I've been fishing. Really, I hate fishing because I go with people that love fishing and they want to stay for 13 hours. And they always are like, Nick, is that you, God? No, I'm just kidding. But they're always like, Nick, at 6:30, that's when the fishes start doing their thing. I'm like, well, why have we been out here since 2:30 then? They always have some magic that the fish is going to do, and you end up getting stuck for like a 10-hour journey and one fish. And I'm like, that's not me. I need more excitement than that. But here's what I'll do when the fish I bobber fish. I know that ain't like expert level because I don't really know what's going on and the wind blows. And I'm like, that's the fish. And I'm like, no, it ain't. So here's what I'll do. I'll be so bored. And I'll get overly excited at the very first nibble, and I'll pull back way too early. Like the very first time I see my pole move, it's a 30-pounder, and I know it, and it's going back, and I miss the fish. Here's what I've learned, though. It's almost like the fish knows to stay away, right? Like it doesn't just, boom. What's the fish usually do? It nibbles. It kind of plays around with the bait. And it's almost like it knows, like, I probably shouldn't do this. I probably should stay away from this. I'm probably in danger. But then as you see, what happens is the fish can't resist. And expert fisher people, they'll tell you, hey, Nick, don't pull back yet. Just wait. Let it grab the bait and the hook and then go. What happens is the fish then takes the whole bait. It nibbles until it can't resist any longer, and it has to take a bite of what it's craving. It nibbles at it, and it asks, do I like this? And it's shiny, and it's attracted to it. And it has to take a complete bite of what it's craving. And what I know is even the most well-meaning Christians find themselves doing the exact same thing. What starts as a small piece leads to the whole pie. What starts as a small compromise leads to a bigger compromise. What starts as a small nibble at the sin in your life leads to you with a lot of sin in your life. It always leads to more and more and more. And what starts as a nibble usually ends up with a hook deep within your mouth. Do you know how many times I've deleted Facebook because it distracts me and my attention away from Christ, because I'd rather grab my phone than my Bible, only to download it again and again and again? Do you know how many times I was like, I'm not going to get suckered into that show, only to click the first episode and then end up on season 3 a day later? Like, do you know how many times I was like, Nick, don't do it. Don't fall for the bait. And Netflix is like, suggested watching just for you. It's like, oh my goodness, that's the bait. Do you know how many times I've told myself, when I make a certain amount of money, then I won't chase money anymore? Do you know how many times I told myself, when I get to a certain standard, a certain place in life, that I would be solely just dedicated to God? Here's the insanity, though. I said that when I got out of jail. I said, God, I'll just live for you if I get out of jail. And then I got out, and then it was the next thing. God, if you give me a job, I'll live for you. God, if you do this, I'll live for you. And there's always that thing that we just seem to focus on that always takes our attention away from God. And it's not always the worst of the worst. It's a lot of times it's the apple pie, the good things that takes our attention away from Him and puts the hook deep within your mouth. The problem is it's a lie. It's a lie when we say, hey, I'll get back to you later, God. And when we fast, we're being intentional on saying, just more of you, Jesus, and less of me. You must increase and I must decrease. Here's some truth. We forget our need for God when we feel like we don't need God. We forget our need of God when we feel like we don't need God. When we feel like it's us that provides. When we feel like it's us that's the attraction. When we feel like we're coming up with the great plans. Then we start finding ourselves praying less, fasting less, worshiping less. We always drift to trusting ourselves more than we trust Him. And that's why, honestly, rock bottom can be the best thing that happens to most of us. That's right. Like, rock bottom can be your best friend. And rock bottom is a beautiful thing, because in rock bottom, that's usually that moment where you say, God, save me because I can't save myself. God, I keep messing it up. I keep falling for the foolish trap. God, you do what only you could do. Some bait that the enemy uses, guess what? It may not be fire and brimstone, but it may be the very job that takes your attention away from Him. It may look like your phone. It may just look like apple pie. When Jesus says, pick up your cross and follow me, He never said it would be easy. He never just said like, hey, this is going to be a skip through the park. He never said it was going to be the most comfortable and most enjoyable thing. If we're not intentional as believers, we can find ourselves saying, I was in church. I was in small church. I was being discipled. I was giving. I was serving. And now it's a struggle to even come. We fast to say, God, what would you have me do? Where would you like me to serve? I want to trust in you more. And the things that I find myself craving aren't the things that I should be craving. We fast from things like shows and our phones to place our attention upon Him. And we fast from food to declare, Lord, you are what I need. Lord, you are my strength, and you provide, and you are my focus. So I ask you this morning, what is it that you hunger for? What is it that you give your time to? What is it that you find yourself craving for? What is it that you find yourself nibbling at? What do you get your satisfaction from? What is taking your attention away from God and has those good things replace God things? Has that job became your idol? Has that man or woman became your idol? Is that phone your idol? That food your idol? Is success your idol? Money your idol? Is that show your idol? Are kids' sports your idol? I always have to ask myself that question. Nick, where do your priorities lie? What is your attention on? Because if I can tell my daughter, hey, you can miss this, even though we've committed to church, then it shows her where our dedication lies at. You know what our heart produces when we don't seek God and fast? More idols. More idols. They're never ending. That's because our hearts are idol factories that are never satisfied, and we take good things and put them in the place of God things. We lie to ourselves and think, after I do this, I'll get back to you, God. I'm just having a little peace. Surely you understand, God, that this apple pie is so good, and it has whipped cream on top of it. Think about the things that you try to justify with God. God, surely you understand. Even though I know this is sin, surely you would be okay with this. And I'm here to tell you, God is not co-signing the sin in your life. God is not switching around what He said is sin because it fits what you want. God is saying, place your attention back upon me. Here's rule number 1. Never make God number 2. Rule number 1 is to never make God number 2. That's because God is always better and far more worthy than anything you can replace him with. In one of my favorite quotes of all time, KB says this: if life reduces you to realize that God is your only hope, then life has done you a favor. If life has reduced you to realize that God is your only hope, then life has done you a favor. Sometimes rock bottom is where God does his greatest work at. Like sometimes at rock bottom, it's your best friend. It's where abandonment happens. It's where arms go up. It's where God, just you, God. I want to be in your word. I want to be in your presence. I want to seek after you. We fast, that's why we fast. We fast to be reminded of our need of him, that contentment is found in him and not of things of this world. When we fast, it leads us to ask, is God really the number one in my life? God, are you really my main focus? God, are you really my top priority? God, are you really all I need? God, is my contentment and my satisfaction found in you? Here's one thing that always convicts me. If you're in a D group and you do your readings, it takes about 15 minutes to 20 minutes. Here's the excuse that I sometimes can use. I just didn't have time today. I didn't have time to get in my word today. Hey, I had to skip a few days. But the insanity of that is I bet I didn't skip a few days scrolling on Facebook. I bet I didn't skip a few days watching my favorite show. I bet I didn't skip what I wanted to do. So here's what I think as I think about my motivations. What if our prayers weren't God, give me more, but God, take away more if it isn't from you? Like, what if we started praying that prayer? God, take away more if it isn't from you. God, take that out of my life if it isn't pointed me to you. Jesus, when he was tempted, fasted 40 days and 40 nights. He set the ultimate example for us. So whether it's food or your phone or distractions, there are many things on a daily basis that you nibble at that we can all push away to be more focused upon him if we was to be honest. You know what we say at rock bottom? God, all I need is you. That's what we say. God, just give me more of you. I'll live for you. If you get me out of this situation, I'm all yours. And that's my prayer today. God, give us that kind of attitude again. God, give us that kind of heart again where it's all about you. You know what? Like when God first saved me, I was in any church service. I was at every prayer event. I was at revivals. I would just stop at places, at prayer meetings, in men's Bible studies. The guy that disciples me asked me to meet him at McDonald's at 6 a.m. And it was a blessing to my life. It was like, man, I'll meet you at 6 a.m. Sure, I'll wake up. Why is that became harder and harder and harder the more I live for Christ? That hunger should be more because, man, there are people going to hell because they haven't heard the gospel. Why do our hearts not burn for that? So what if our prayers sounded like, God, if it takes me away from you, then take me away from it? Like, that's a bold prayer. God, if this thing takes me away from you, then take me away from it. What if we didn't fit our schedules? What if we didn't fit God into our schedules, but scheduled things around our time with God? Like, what if we didn't just fit God? God, I got an extra 10 minutes on my way to work. I'll just spend that with you. But what if we didn't answer the phone because that's our alone time with God? What if that text didn't distract us when we're in our prayer time? What if those emails didn't take our attention away from him? What if we could get more than 5 men to show up to men's Bible study? What if we gave to missions like we should? What if we could worship longer than 1 hour? What if we invited our neighbors over to tell them about Jesus? What if we lived our lives sold out for Christ, looking for and seeking him feasting with him, spending time with him, and as a result of the time spent with him, it's no longer what if, but a reality. Here's what I know. There's a lot of kids, and they grow up in church on Sundays. And they go home, and Monday through Saturday, it's just back to normal life. God isn't mentioned, prayer isn't mentioned, and then they go back to church the next Sunday over and over and over again. Do you know what that speaks to those children? God isn't the priority, everything else is. And here's what I think about. You can't pour from an empty cup, it's truth. But I also realize the cup may be empty because you're drinking from the wrong one. Like, the cup is empty because we're drinking from the wrong cup. Christ's cup doesn't empty. Like, his cup is satisfying. His cup is refreshing. His cup is all that we need. So when you find yourself at a place with an empty cup and drained, it's probably because our priorities and we're nibbling on the wrong plate. We're feasting at the wrong table. Remember what Jesus tells us in 1 Peter 2:9 through 11. And this should be refreshing, and this should fill us up, and this should be a cup that we drink from. He says, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Verse 11, beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from passions of the flesh. Quit nibbling on it, which wage war against your soul. As I read that verse this week, I thought about when he said, who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Nick, have you forgotten what God did for you? Nick, have you forgotten how he restored your family? Nick, have you forgotten how Christ saved your life when you was at your bottom? Nick, have you forgotten what you truly worship? Nick, have you forgotten to live your life for him instead of other people? That's what I find myself doing. And that's why that verse, once you have not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. As Christians, it shouldn't be abnormal to pray and to fast and spend alone time with God. It shouldn't be abnormal for us to get together, if anything, just to read the word. It shouldn't be abnormal to push away the things of this world, to put things in their proper place, and that's with God first. Like, it shouldn't be abnormal if Dave called me, hey, you just want to get together and read Romans today? That shouldn't be an abnormal thing, because guess what fishing people say? You want to get together and fish today? So why is it abnormal to just as Christians to say, hey, let's just get together and read the word? Let's just get together and pray today. And I'm sure some of our lives would put our attention back on God if we got together, instead of gossip, we prayed. If we got together and pointed each other, hey man, I'm struggling. My life seems to be falling apart. And we had people to remind us, hey, put your attention back on Jesus. If we had people to kind of point our chins like, hey, your eyes are in the wrong place. Your attentions have been on the wrong things. And I see you chasing after things of this world more than I see you chasing things for Christ. So here's a question that I have to ask you. That money you chase, we chase, is it greed or a need? That time we spend on other things, is it stealing your time away from Christ? And really the motivation comes down to, are we trying to get noticed by people or concerned with being noticed by a holy and perfect God? Because there's a difference. When he knows you, I was listening to a song this morning and it said, he knows your name. And I just thought about how that changed everything in my life when I realized a perfect and holy God knows Nick Martin by name. A perfect and holy God knows Maurice by name. A perfect and holy God knows Lucas by name. That should change everything. The fact that Jesus rose from the dead should change everything about my day to day and how I spend my time and what I find myself worshiping. It's no longer about what Nick wants and Nick's plans and Nick's desires and Nick's goals. It's about Christ. What do you want from my life? How do you want me to live? And I want to live it for you, for the glory of God. Let's read these verses again. Matthew 6, 16 through 18. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disguise their faces that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees you in secret will reward you. You know what the hypocrites were concerned with? Being seen by everyone else. They was putting on a show. That was what a hypocrite was. It was an actor who was performing. It was, hey, look at me. It was, hey, and that's what Jesus is saying. Hey, don't look gloomy like the hypocrites. Don't go to the street corner and pray. Don't give and blow the trumpet. Hey, do it to seek after me, even if no one has to know about it. No one has to know about your giving and your praying and your fasting, because a holy and perfect God sees what you're doing. The proper motivation for a fast isn't a business exchange. It's not, God, I'm going to fast and I'm going to dedicate my time with you and I'm going to push away this so you would give me that. That's not what a fast is. It's, hey, well, God, I sacrificed for you, so you think you would notice me? That's what we can do. We think that a holy and perfect God, when we perform well, that he loves us even more. That he's just so impressed with your dedication and your ability to stay away from it. And Christ doesn't treat us like that. He loves you on your worst day as he does on your best day. Fasting, what it does, it makes us question, what kingdom am I living for? Who do I belong to? Where are my priorities? Fasting realigns and recenters us and makes us ask the question, is it about what I want or what about God wants? Is it about my plans or his, and is God number one in my life? Since the drift is always to things of this world, we must be intentional about our time with him and asking Jesus to remove the idols that we have in our hearts. That's what I'm going to ask us to do this morning as the worship team comes up. What are the idols that you hold on to so tightly? So tightly with a closed fist. Because that's a hard prayer. God, take this away from me if this takes me away from you. Because it hurts. Because this don't fit into my plans, into my goals, into my dreams. For some of you in here, fasting may be you miss a meal. For some of you, fasting may mean get off social media. For some of you, it may be work. But I believe we all have that thing that keeps us distracted, right? We all have that thing that puts our eyes in the wrong place, and we all have that thing that we like to nibble at. What if some of our testimonies were this? I turned off the TV. I got rid of the TV so I could spend more time in my word. Like, what if that was some of our testimonies? What if some of our testimonies were, man, I got off Facebook to start praying more for the revival? What if some of our testimonies were, man, I spend my first 30 minutes a day with God, and that's mine and his time? And I heard a testimony at Truth and Grace 2 weeks ago, and it absolutely, it floored me. And it made me question myself. It was with Whammy and Katrina, and they'll be here next service. And what they said is, man, 21 months ago, we were sleeping in an alley. 21 months ago, we didn't have a roof over our head, and we were just completely homeless. And over the last 21 months, Whammy and Katrina have plugged in, and I've watched them grow. I've watched them get baptized in serves, and it gives me chills to think about how far God has brought them. Literally, they went from homeless to they just moved in a house with their kids. Well, here's what happened a few months ago. Whammy said, hey, man, my job has been pulling me away from church. My job has been taking my attentions away from Christ, and I really don't know what to do. Because I feel like, I'm going in the right direction, and I got this job, but everything I was doing and spending time in Bible study and spending time in prayer and spending time with God, I'm no longer able to do. So Whammy, even though they had just got that house, says, I'm going to take a pay cut. I'm going to go to a different job because I need to be in small church, and I need to be at church, and I need to be accountable, and I need to spend time with God. And here's what happened after he did that. He said, Nick, out of nowhere, after I took my pay cut, so I could spend more time with God, I show up to work one day, and my boss said, here's a raise because you always show up early. So now what Whammy told me is he makes more from the new job he took to put his priorities back on God than the job he walked away from. And I just thought about some of us are missing those testimonies because we buy into the lie of we provide instead of God provides. We buy into the lie of, man, I just can't plug in. I got stuff to do. I got to go to work. And honestly, we buy into the lie of, man, I want to give and I want to tithe, but it just doesn't work into my plan and my budget and my goals. And that's what I feel like God is asking us and telling us. God is always saying, hey, trust me more than you trust yourself. Trust my plans more than you trust your own. It doesn't have to make sense to you, but just follow me. Fasting as Christian causes us to have a knees first mentality that says, God, I know I just woke up and the world is going to scream for my attention, but I must spend my time with you. I must be intentional about you. I must make you top priority into my life. Here's what I know. Every morning I wake up, my mind goes crazy. It's like, I got to do this, I got to do that. And I already have a long list of things that I got to do. And having a knees first mentality makes me slow down and just say, that can wait. That's going to be there. But me and your time, God, that's top priority. Spending time with your word, with you is top priority. And if you don't know Christ today, what I want you to tell you is he's worthy of being top priority in your life. He's worthy of being number one in your life. He's worthy of all the time you could give him. He's worthy of anything that you think you could lose. You gain everything with him. Here's what Jesus did for Nick, for sinners. He died the death that we deserve. He took the wrath of God upon his back. He took the punishment upon his shoulders so that we may become the righteousness of God. Christ alone, what he did in my life is he saved the unsavable. He restored the unrestorable, and he changed the unchangeable. What makes you think he can't do that for you? Christian, it starts now. It starts today. Don't put it off any longer. Be intentional about your time with Christ. And as a church, I'm asking each one of us, hey, search your heart. What idols do I have that are taking my attention away from him? What things in my life do I find myself nibbling at? And what table am I feasting on? So for me, and it may be different from you, like for me, I'm going to get off Facebook for the next 7 days, and I'm going to pray for the revival, and I'm going to pray for people that don't know Christ, and I'm going to be intentional about my time with him. For you, it may be missing a meal, and that's the time you spend with God. For you, it may be cutting off Netflix or cutting off the TV or just putting your phone in a drawer for one day. But we all have that thing that takes our attention away from Him. And this morning, I'm asking us, and I'm asking God to reveal the idols in our life to place our attention back where it belongs, on Him. Thank you.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the sermon. If you guys would like to stay connected to us and what we're doing, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel or you can like us on Facebook.
You can also visit our website at MatthewsTableOnesboro.com. A cool feature on our website is we have a prayer wall. You can place your prayer on there and someone will be praying for you. To partner with us financially, you can text the number 73256 with Matthew's Table with no space in between. Because of your giving, we can be a missional church that reaches the lost and goes hits the streets for Jesus. Thank you.